In this video, we will be finishing up the 4x10 Dungeons and Dragons game table that I made for a coworker of mine. This sports a torsion style table with cubbies for putting your game books in and a whiteboard that you can have your gameplay written out on if you should move from one day to another. If you missed the first video, these are the clips we're showing right here. Definitely hit the link in the description below and go watch that, because that will give you a good baseline, pun intended there, because that's when we made the base for the table we are going to be making today. To get started, we're going to start breaking down our 3/4 inch maple plywood on the table saw and then move over to the miter station where we can break things down to their final length using the miter saw. Again, this is a torsion table assembly on the inside, but the bottom is going to have a separate cavity so that there's room for cords and chargers to go up inside and pass through some wireways that we will put in place. Using the Kreg ACS track saw to break down those crosscuts of that 3/4 inch plywood, much safer to do with a track saw or a circular saw versus trying to wield those larger pieces on the table saw. The Kreg Foreman makes super quick work of cutting all these pocket holes to build the torsion portion of the tabletop. Wow, try to say that twice. But if you don't have an expensive Foreman like this, there's lots of other options that we'll actually talk about later, like the K5 or an R3, which were some of my first tools when I started woodworking. And I remember when I got those, the doors that were wide open in my mind of all the things I could build. Here you can see all the pocket holes, and you can see what I mean by the open cavity on the bottom where we can run wires and whatnot through. Using the Kreg Automax clamps to be able to hold everything in place, add some glue, and then we're going to use some Kreg 1 1/4 inch coarse pocket hole screws to assemble everything together. I made sure everything was flush to the outside of the cross members, and then as you can see, the bottom piece of plywood is what the inside portion of the cubbies is going to be, and you can see that open cavity right underneath the wireway holes. I then aligned the other edge of that board, which happens to be the bottom of the table, to the other cross members, used my square to make sure everything was nice and straight and plumb, and then screwed everything in place with the pocket hole screws. Now the whiteboard gameplay portion of this table is actually slightly wider than 48 inches or 4 foot. So how do we do that with a 4x8 inch piece of plywood, 4x8 foot piece of plywood? We need to join it together. So I cut down a couple of pieces slightly wider than exactly in half, and then added some biscuit slots so that we can join the two pieces together to get the 48 inches that we need. I also did mention this is a 4x10 foot table. So what we see right here is a section that is going to be where the white game board is going to go. And then on the opposite side, over by the planer, I think that is like the commander or the gameplay leader, or I don't know the exact terminology. There's going to be a raised section that's just plywood that will be painted black, and we'll see that later, or stained black. We'll see that later. But what we're doing right here is adding wood glue, making sure we got plenty of glue on those biscuits so that we can join these two pieces of plywood together to make that exact 4 foot wide support underneath so that the white game board can go in place. Later on, you'll see we'll add some hard maple edge banding, which actually makes this table decently over 4 foot. Wanted to take a quick pause and thank the sponsor of today's video, who is Kreg Tool. Visit them, kregtool.com, link in the description below. They got something for everybody. In this video, I use the Kreg Foreman. That makes pocket holes super fast, super reliable, so I can make a table like I'm building in this video, and like the table I'm building right over there, super quickly. But as you can see, they got Kreg clamps right here. They got a different style of Kreg clamps right here. If you don't want to spend the money on a Foreman, you have options. You have something like the K5 behind me right there to drill pocket holes. And one of the first tools that I purchased when I started woodworking, I believe this is the R3, cost about 30 bucks. I remember when I got that, all of the doors that in my mind were opened for woodworking. And Kreg's even got stuff to cut things down, like the Kreg ACS track saw right here, which I also use in this video. Again, link in the description, kregtool.com, and I'm sure they're going to have some awesome Black Friday sales, so be sure to check them out. Support us by supporting the sponsor, and thank you to Kreg Tool for sponsoring this video. Let's go ahead and add that edge banding that I mentioned earlier. This is all hard maple that I milled down to the proper dimensions and then cut down on the miter saw to get the angles so that it's a nicely wrapped mitered hardwood edge banding. What is that groove that you see by my hand right there? That was an attempt. It didn't really work out as well as we wanted to be able to make kind of removable tables and removable drink sections that will clip into there, and just using gravity kind of lever into place and then hold these nice little areas. Didn't quite work out as well as we wanted. I was going to make some more if everything worked out well for the commission, and they ended up not wanting those extra pieces. So that was kind of a failed attempt, but a good idea. Once I got the top and bottom hard edge banding in place, we needed to add some portions in the middle between the different sections, and also we need to glue together some 90-degree angle portions to go around the edges. Measuring exactly off the table, able to cut those down over at the miter saw, add some glue, make sure we are centered correctly over those plywood dividers, and nail in place. And here you can see the beautiful mitered corners like I mentioned earlier, and I'm using some angled spring clamps to be able to make sure that miter is perfectly closed tight. Once those were given time to set up, a little bit more wood glue and some brad nails, and we are ready to go. We are moving right along on this tabletop, and it is looking fabulous. Now it is time to really finish it up. I'm going to be using some wood putty to fill in any gaps and to fill in any nail holes, because we are going to be staining this. It's going to be a very dark, almost black stain per the commission's request, and we want to make sure there are no nail holes. And here you can actually see that commander or game leader portion that is raised up above the rest of the gameplay table where that whiteboard will go in place. Adding all the putty, letting it set up, and then we will hit it all with a sander later to make sure everything is perfectly smooth. As always, my sanding process is to start with 120 grit and work my way up to 220 grit, but I spared you guys all the details, and we just breezed through a quick bit of sanding right here with the 6-inch Mirka sander. And now is when the real fun begins. We are using the Fuji Q5 Platinum sprayer. I'm using a 0.8 millimeter tip because we are actually spraying stain. I don't know if I've ever done that before on this channel. I have done it personally a few times. It's a real good time. Really, really quick way to apply some stain, but it does make a mess. Now, we are actually only applying this espresso stain from General Finishes on the outer portions. So the inner cubbies are just going to get a clear polyurethane. And here you can see how we're accomplishing that with some brown paper that we put inside so that we would protect the inner portions. Here you can see it's a quick application of the stain, goes on very, very quickly, and I did not follow up by wiping anything down, which I have found to be a little bit tricky with the General Finishes water-based stain. The application process is very finicky, but it went on beautiful with this spraying process. Like I said, spray finish or don't do it at all. So we sprayed the stain, and then we followed it up with 3 finishes of my favorite Enduro Clear polyurethane. That was sprayed on the complete tabletop as well as the legs, which we made in the previous video. Again, link to that in the description below. Once everything had cured, I was able to deliver this product to the customer. He was ecstatic, as you can see in some of the pictures that are following up here. It really did turn out great. Got the finish nailed with the Fuji Q5 Platinum, and this table is going to last a very, very long time. This was actually a great project for me because I wanted to have some practice for building these pedestal style tables, as I am adding a physical side to the DIY Tyler brand Dalcori Furniture, where I will be making pieces like this in the future. As you can see, did get some video of setting it up, but the users are extremely happy, and this is the first time it's been used, and I have gotten feedback that they use it quite a bit and absolutely love it. I'm DIY Tyler, you guys have a good one.